Hey guys, it's Dr. May. Here again with sensory motor psychotherapy video. So this one, I really think there's some good stuff here. It might be similar to some things you learned elsewhere, but I feel that sensory motor psychotherapy offers us richer material about vocabulary for our sensations, our emotions, and our thoughts. And learning how to describe them better, observe and describe them better, can help us to neutralize them and to work better with all three and work toward our recovery, of course. Okay, so that's going to be the theme of today. I hope you like this one. Okay, here we go. All right, so it's called Exploring Body Sensations, because of course in sensory motor psychotherapy, the body is a big focus. But again, it's also going to integrate it with some vocabulary and describing of emotions and thoughts and beliefs also. Okay, so as you might know, so sensory motor psychotherapy was designed to help us deal with trauma and with problems with attachment or our core relationships with our, caregivers and parents and so forth, and how those impact our relationships now. So our body sensations are deeply linked in with these. So if you remember from a few videos ago, we talked about procedural memory. So we implicitly or automatically develop certain body movements and emotions and even beliefs because of the experiences we've had in our life. So our attachment experiences and our trauma experiences influence these very strongly. So in order to untangle the problems we've had, it's very important for us to get to know our bodies better because our bodies keep the score, so to speak. There's actually a really good book on trauma called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's called that for a reason, because the body is very wrapped up in our traumatic experiences. And dealing with that better helps us a lot. There's also another book called Your Biography Becomes Your Biology, right? So your life story, the things you've been through, start to be embedded in your movements, in your sensations, in your emotions, right? So we have to look at all of these in order to heal. All right, so that's going to be one of the main goals of today. Okay, so as you might guess, our body sensations can impact and reflect our emotions, right? There's a double arrow there because it could go both ways. Okay, so here's a few examples that you might have experienced yourself. So ever get butterflies in your stomach, right? So let's say, you feel that fluttery feeling and it's a sign that maybe you're excited or you're nervous about something, right? You're about to go on stage for a big performance and you feel those butterflies in your stomach, or you're about to go on a date with somebody you just met and you have butterflies in your stomach. That's a clue about my emotions, right? Another time you might feel like a deep heaviness in your chest. And that could be a sign that you're feeling sad, depressed, or in grief. It's a characteristic feeling that we often have when those emotions are coming. So I can notice that physical sensation and say, yeah, that is telling me something about how I'm feeling. Okay. Similarly, we tend to clench our teeth when we're angry. Kind of think of like a vicious dog and he bares his teeth and goes, arr, right? Or a shark. Because we do that too, even though we're not animals, right? We tend to clench our teeth or show our teeth when we're angry. So if I notice I'm clenching my teeth, it might be a clue that I'm feeling upset about something or angry about something, right? So the physical gives me clues about the emotional. Okay, same thing with my body sensations and my thoughts and beliefs, okay? And it's very interesting. You may not have thought about it quite this way, but it's actually kind of true. So if you think about something that really feels true to you, it's not just true on a rational level, like it viscerally in your body has a sensation that makes it feel more true to you, right? And if you try to believe something that you think sounds right, but you don't fully believe it, you might have a body sensation that's not going along with it. So it doesn't feel as true, right? So for example, if you're trying to tell yourself, yeah, I'm safe, I'm okay, but your body feels like really anxious and revved up, you may not fully believe that, even though there's evidence proving that you're actually okay right now. You know what I'm saying? Have you ever been in that situation? No, I know I should be okay. I'm safe because of A, B, C, and D, but I just still feel so like something's wrong. Okay, so that's an example of how it's hard to believe a thought when your body's not in sync with it. Okay, but when it is in sync, it could be a clue, right? So if I'm relaxed, like that woman there looks very comfortable and relaxed, feeling that relaxed sensation could contribute to her belief that I am okay. right? It's easier to feel safe and okay if your body's relaxed. It goes together. If I have a hollow feeling in my chest, or I feel that awful, empty feeling, that might give me a thought that, I'm lonely. Nobody loves me. I'm all by myself in this world. I'm isolated, right? Because that's the thought that feels true with that body sensation. And it, in fact, might not be true, but it could be an association I have to that body sensation because maybe at some point in my life it really was true. Okay. But my body's making me feel like it still is true. So thoughts and beliefs intertwined, right? Okay. So one of the things we're going to do is mindfulness, right? So we have to be mindfully aware of our body sensations and how we're experiencing them in the present moment, right? So mindfulness is always a great tool. It's one of the ones that we're using here in sensory motor psychotherapy. There was a video about directed mindfulness, which goes along with this as well, okay? So benefits of being mindful of body sensations. So first, it helps us to stay in the present moment, right? And one of the definitions about mindfulness is being in the present moment. So all of our body sensations are happening in the here and now. So I could tune into any one of them and it could bring me back to the present. So if I'm a little spaced out in my mind or worried about the past, worried about the future, I could bring myself back at any time by focusing on a body sensation. A breath is a popular one, right? In mindfulness, we often talk about our breath, but other ones will do as well. Okay, another thing is that as an added benefit, sometimes it actually, just by being mindful of them, you're relating to your body in a different way, right? So let's say instead of relating to a feeling of my heart fluttering with fear, I'm going to relate to it with curiosity and mindfulness and say, oh, that's interesting. I'm noticing it beating very quickly. It has a fluttery feeling. It has some tightness in my chest. Oh, that's curious. I'm curious about that. What's that? Is it changing? Oh, it's a little different right now than it was, right? Just being mindful of it changes the way I relate to it. And that could help to neutralize it. And it could actually help me calm down a little bit and regulate my arousal and even change some negative vibes that I have. It gives it a different spin. Okay. Another key aspect is it enhances my self-understanding. I'm never going to fully gain insight or fully understand myself if I ignore my body, because my body is a rich source of information. So as we just talked about, it's tied into my emotions, it's tied into my thinking. So observing my body enhances my understanding about my thoughts and my emotions, right? And it helps me understand what's going on with me, or what's going on in the here and now with me in my relationships, or me in this situation, right? So it's really important for me to gain self-understanding, because with knowledge is power. With knowledge is greater choice, okay? Another thing is that it helps me feel more connected to myself, okay? And it's very important to feel connected with yourself in order to feel solid, to feel grounded, to feel like you're capable of fully connecting in a healthy way with another person, right? So you have to observe yourself and be with yourself to feel self-connected and then to connect in a healthy way with others, okay? And it also helps me better understand my needs and my desires, right? A great question to ask ourselves is, what do I need right now, right? It may not be something we're used to asking, but it's an important question because sometimes we're not really sure, or we act on impulse instead of on what we truly need in this moment, okay? So our body helps give us clues about that. So that's why it's really helpful to learn to be mindful of body sensations, okay? Now, I know what you're thinking, possibly, that it's a little scary. The whole idea of observing body sensations might be a little nerve-wracking and a little unsettling, right? Because it could be that if you've been in an experience of trauma, or if you've had attachment problems in your past, then your body's learned to react to those. And you associate your body reactions with scary things. So when your heart flutters, it's not just merely your heart's fluttering. It's my heart fluttering, it makes me feel fear. It reminds me of this other time when I was in danger, and when this happened and that happened. And it becomes a whole associative network of really painful, uncomfortable things. And so sometimes adaptively, we learn to cut off our body and stop paying attention to it, right? And we just ignore it, or we just override it. We put it aside. We try to disconnect from it because it was a coping mechanism, right? But there's ways that we can learn to reconnect with our body slowly and using certain techniques to make it a little bit easier for us, because there are the benefits, right? So it's important for us to acknowledge that we have fears about it, but also work with it. Okay, and here's a point that could maybe help us gain a little more insight into it. So let's look at the yellow part on the bottom of this slide. So I'm going to read this to you and really just let it sink in. A main reason why body sensations become scary is that they were merged with painful emotions and distressing thoughts. They can also remind us of painful events from the past. All right, so that's really it in a nutshell. I know I kind of said it, but I just wanted to really make it a headline just to better understand ourselves, because this is why it's hard. So if we look at the 3 building blocks down there, right? The emotions, body sensations, and thoughts, they're fused together, right? That's normally how we experience them. So it's very hard to experience one without the others, all right? But in part of the healing, this is what we're going to do. We're going to learn how to separate them out. And separating them out is the key, because if we do one at a time, it neutralizes them and it prevents them from being as triggering, and it helps them to be more manageable. Okay, so some key little things we could think about is to be more curious about body sensation instead of just reacting to it emotionally or with a certain belief. We're just going to observe it for what it is. Whatever it is, we're just going to take it for a pure body sensation and use a body sensation vocabulary to describe it. Okay, so later in this presentation, we're going to talk about vocabulary words we can use to just purely describe sensations. Okay, and also another thing we could try, which we're not going to focus on a lot today, is to focus more on peripheral sensations rather than ones in our torso and in our core, because those tend to be the ones that are a little more triggering. Like I tend to be a little less triggered by, my toes and my fingers, right, than I do about my insides. Okay. All right, so here we go. Vocabulary for sensations. So I had a little fun with PowerPoint and this thing called design ideas to help make the graphics a little more interesting for us. So in addition to the words, I wanted to give us some pictures to kind of, because sometimes like we have an image of what the feeling is like and what it's looking like, right? So I wanted to kind of help to capture that. And of course, this isn't like every single word you could ever possibly use. There's more, but this is just a sampling that we could kind of use to get us started, okay? Here we go. Okay, so this is a grouping that I put together of airy, floaty, light, or puffy. All right, so sometimes we have that kind of a sensation. All right, and maybe you could see those pictures and it kind of reminds you of something that you felt inside. Okay, about feeling fluid. All right, maybe it's a feeling that you have about your movement or about the way your internal processes are going. So a fluid sensation. These I'll kind of put together because they're all about like some like small shivery kind of movements, right? So they're micro movements that are happening within us that we might notice. So it could be bubbly, fluttery, jerky, jumbly, quaking, quivery, shivery, shuddering, tickly, trembling, twitchy, itchy, vibrating, or wobbly. Okay, so a bunch of words here kind of hinting at some similar phenomenon, but some might feel more right to you than others. Okay, and we all have pain sometimes, and there's many different ways of describing pain than just the word pain, right? So here's a few: achy, radiating, and sore. Other ones: burning, flushed, hot, warm. Okay, and they all have different shades of meaning, right? Does some of those pictures also look like they kind of represent something you felt inside before? Okay, so here's some sharper words, I guess we could say. So pins and needles, prickly, sharp, or tingling. And look at some of those pictures, right? We have some prickly kinds of pictures here. Here's some vocabulary words about like kind of tightness, and there's all different ways we might experience that within our body. So here are a few words for that. So clenched, constricted, knotted, stiff, thick, tight, suffocating, and tense. Pretty cool, right? All right. Now these are kind of, I guess, what I'll categorize as electric kind of feelings, right? Buzzy, electric, and energized. Okay. Now these are kind of, I guess, congested kind of feelings, right? So bloated, blocked, congested, dense, and heavy, right? So very opposite of the airy, floaty stuff we started out with, right? So sometimes you feel very light, sometimes we might feel very heavy, right? Maybe certain parts feel one way, certain parts feel another way. Okay, we've all kind of gone through this before. Churning, nauseous, okay. So this kind of might go with that empty feeling that we sometimes have, right? So dull, empty, fuzzy, numb, paralyzed. Might be related to the freeze, the fold collapse, the shutdown response, right? All this might be some of the things we go through. All right, other times, flaccid, weak, dizzy, faint, breathless. All right, so this is the low energy mode. This is the tired mode, okay? All right, I guess these are all the wet words. Okay, so clammy, damp, moist, sweaty. Okay, got a lot of moisture here, huh? All right, and we had hot before, all the hots, so this is all the colds. So we have chills, cool, cold, goosebumps. All right. Okay, so that sums up some of the main ones for sensation. Okay, so whenever you're trying to break it down and describe a building block for body sensations, those are the kinds of words you can use. Okay, so those are purely sensation words, right? And as you can see, there's a lot of different things we could think of, and probably more than you normally would think of. I know it's certainly more than I thought of before I put this one together. So anyway, so we could always refer back to that. Okay, so now we're going to break it down and go to the feeling side, the feeling building block. Okay, and sometimes we throw around the word feel, but we don't lead it into an emotion word, right? We say like, I feel like I'm no good, but that's actually a thought. Or we say, I'm feeling, weak, but that's actually a physical sensation, right? So emotion words are really important to use when you're trying to express your emotions, okay? So I'm gonna go over some emotion words. All right, so here's just a random list of some common emotions that we experience. Okay, I'm not going to read them all to you, but these are just main ones that I threw together. Okay, but you don't have to necessarily look at this list. There's a lot of easy ways to get a grip on emotion words, right? And all you have to do is search on the internet. So, for example, this is a nice emotion wheel, and the cool thing about this is it kind of has a certain order to it, right? And it talks about like the stuff in between those spokes, right? And there's sort of an intensity toward the middle, and then it gets a little bit less intense toward the spokes. And in between the spokes is kind of combinations of different things. So it's kind of cool, like fear plus surprise equals awe. Disgust plus anger equals contempt. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Another thing you might want to try too is to actually look up in the dictionary what certain emotion words mean. You'd be surprised. Sometimes it means something different than you think, especially like the more unusual emotion words, like ones that you don't use every day. It kind of gives you a better shade of meaning if you just look it up, okay? Another thing is if you're a DBT person and you happen to have the DBT workbook, there's a lot of great emotion worksheets there that kind of go over some of the core emotions, and it talks about common triggers for the emotions, body sensations, urges, all that kind of stuff that are associated with some of the core emotions, maybe about 8 of them. I forgot how many they have exactly. Okay, so that's another source. Also, there's a popular emotions wheel that looks like this. It's different than this emotions wheel. And it starts out with some core emotions in the center, and then it breaks it down into kind of like subsections of each emotion. All right, so let's say we look at fearful. So that breaks down into scared, anxious, insecure, weak, rejected, and threatened. So all those have to do with fearful, but they're all kind of more specific. And then the third layer is even more specific than those, right? So if we really want to pare it down and help define what we're feeling, this is kind of a cool resource. You might need your reading glasses a little bit, but it's, has a lot of stuff in there, right? So it definitely gives you good emotion words. And of course, you could look at these sorts of things, the how are you feeling today type posters, and there's a bunch of them out there. And the good thing is that, it gives you some kind of visual to go with it. So you might recognize yourself in some of the faces and say, you know what, that's it, that's how I'm feeling, right? So whatever works for you. But the idea is to use a feeling or emotion word, okay? So it separates it from the sensation words, okay? Oh, excuse me. So now we're going to work on beliefs and meaning. So this is basically about thoughts. Okay, so this is the thought building block. So this should be sounding different than a physical sensation and an emotion. So I'm going to go over some common beliefs we have about self, others, and the world. Okay, so we'll break it down to positive and negative. And just listen to them and start to think about which ones sound true for you. Like, which ones do you think, like, you know what, I kind of do believe that. I hate to admit it, but I do, right? You could even, if you have your notebook with you, just jot those down so you can just kind of be more aware of what some of your beliefs are. All right, so I'll just read those to us so we could kind of be on the same page together. So let's look at the positive beliefs about self first. So we might have a core belief that I'm okay the way I am. God, wouldn't it be great if we all felt this way more often? All right, so that was a little editorial comment, but all right. I'm a decent person. It's okay to accept help. I don't have to be perfect. I have the right to set boundaries. Okay? On the negative side, I'm not good enough the way I am. I deserve the bad things that happen to me. It's all my fault. My feelings aren't okay, and I don't belong here. All right? So if you catch yourself thinking like, you know what, I do believe these negative things, just notice it for now. You don't have to make this an occasion to further beat up on yourself by saying, oh no, and now I did something else wrong by thinking this way. It's okay, just notice what it is, right? We're just increasing our awareness about what we're believing. All right, so here's some beliefs about others. All right, on the positive side, I can usually count on others. My boundaries are usually respected. Most people are decent human beings. I can basically trust others to treat me well. Conflict between people is normal and can be resolved. All right, can you just picture the kind of life experiences you might have had to have in order to come to these positive beliefs about others, right? Not a lot of us have had a lot of really positive interpersonal experiences to develop these positive beliefs. So if you don't already feel this way, don't worry, okay? It's possible to create better experiences for ourselves so these start to feel a little more true. All right, so just notice it for now, whether you have these or not. On the negative side, beliefs about others. I'll be hurt if I depend on others. Other people are just out for themselves. People will leave me when I need them. No one will ever understand me. And relationships are never safe or stable, right? So let's just think about the life experiences that tend to lead to these beliefs, right? And how a lot of them might make sense based on your past experience. But it's also, again, possible to create some new experiences so that they don't feel like they have to be true all the time for all people. All right, so beliefs about the world. All right, so this is a little broader than just other people. It's just kind of like life in general, all right? So on the positive side, we'll start, of course. There's pain, but also a lot of joy in the world. There is a place for me here. Scary things happen, but the world is usually safe. I can look forward to the future. There are resources to help me cope with hardship. All right, on the negative side, the world is a dangerous place. There's no hope for the future. There's no justice in the world. Everything always works against me. There's nothing that the world can offer me. Okay. And I'm sure you could guess too about the kind of emotions that might hook up with these beliefs, right? Because emotions and beliefs go together. Or you might even notice what your body was doing as I read some of these things, because our beliefs are, intersecting with our body reactions as well. All right. So we've come to the exercise portion of our presentation today. All right, so we're going to put some of this stuff into action because, of course, it works better when you actually do it, right, instead of just conceptually understanding. So it takes us to the next level of putting this into practice. All right, so exercise number 1. So we're going to use our vocabulary for sensations. So the stuff that we went over a little earlier in this presentation is going to come to play here. So the idea is, as you, let's say tomorrow you're going to decide, okay, as I go through tomorrow, I'm going to make a point of noticing my body sensations. All right, so I'll notice some pleasant body sensations. Hopefully I'll experience some, or maybe some unpleasant body sensations. Okay, so I'll just kind of jot those down, and try to use my vocabulary for sensations, my sensation words, as I'm just noticing what they are. Okay, and I'll also take note of the situation or situations I was in when I experienced them, because that might have something to do with the body sensations I had, right? Because sometimes we experience a trigger about something one way or the other, positive or negative. Okay, so I'll take note of the situations. And then after that, I'll notice some building blocks that went along with them. Okay, so the thoughts and emotions and movements that had to do with the body sensations, like how did my body move or want to move? All right, and they also want us to look at any images or memories that might have come up, right? Because as I said in the very beginning of the presentation, our body sensations are a lot of times implicitly remembered from the past, right? They're tied into procedural memory, right? They're automatic movements that we've learned over time because of our attachment and trauma experiences. So it's very easy for our body sensations to bring up memories from the past. Okay, so if anything comes up like that, images or memories, just take note of that as well. But I did make it a circle because it's not one of the original 5 building blocks, just in case you were wondering. Okay, so if you've ever, wanted to practice just noticing sensation, right, and using your sensation vocabulary, this exercise is good. Or if you've ever experienced like sensation of being like too numb or not enough sensation or feeling like kind of dead inside, this is also very good for that. Okay, because a lot of people say, I don't know what to do with this numb feeling. It's very uncomfortable. So this is something you can try and see how it goes for you. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to just squeeze up and down one of your arms. Okay, so just do it gently, don't hurt yourself. So this is just to kind of create some sensations there. Okay, and you could experiment with how much pressure you use, how fast you do it, or the way you do it. Okay, so, but don't hurt yourself, just take it easy, right? And then after you do that, just sit there for a moment and notice the difference between how the squeezed arm feels and how your other arm feels, okay? And try to use your vocabulary for sensation to describe the sensations you're experiencing. So you're going to be like an investigator. You're just going to be like a detective, using your sensation vocabulary and being curious about what your arm feels like, and then the other arm too. Okay, and so that kind of could increase our mindfulness and awareness in a safe way. And also, if you happen to notice, wow, that did make me feel a little bit more alive. That did make me feel like a little more present. That's a good thing to file away. That's a good thing to know. Okay. So here's a way to increase sensation with movement, right? So when we feel dead inside, when we feel numb, it's associated with immobile responses such as freeze or fold and collapse, right? So the idea is to get mobile again to increase sensation. And that helps us to feel more alive, more vital again. So using movement to increase sensation is a really important skill. So we're just going to practice it in a simple way, again, just using our arms. So obviously, if you have a shoulder problem or an arm problem on one of your arms, just be careful or use the other arm, okay? So all you have to do, like in the picture there, just practice slowly and mindfully lifting one of your arms. And as you slowly lift it up, just notice the change in sensation in your arms. Okay, so you might feel like I feel something in my shoulder, feel some pressure in my shoulder. I feel a little tugging in my elbow. I feel a little stretching back here. I feel a little tightness in the muscle underneath my thumb, right? I feel a little tingling, maybe a little bit of nerve stretching out. Okay, I feel some of my fingers more than other fingers, right? So whatever it is that you notice is what you notice. Okay, but it's a great chance to practice your sensation vocabulary and to increase sensation so you feel a little bit less numb in your body, right? And if you do one arm and not the other, you could also then, when you're finished, compare how the arms feel and do that kind of thing again, okay? All right, next. Okay, so it looks familiar because we just kind of did this for sensations a few things ago here. All right, so now we're going to do the similar thing for emotions. So one day, decide that today's going to be my awareness of emotions day. So I'm going to go through my day and just try to be aware of what I'm feeling throughout the day. So do some like self-check-ins once in a while and just notice the emotions you feel using your emotion vocabulary, emotion words, when you check in with yourself. So maybe you'll notice some pleasant emotions, some unpleasant emotions. Okay, so just take note of what they are, maybe write them down. And like before, take note of what situations you were in when you experience those emotions, because that might be tied into what the emotions are, right? Okay, and then again, after you do that, you kind of could explore how those emotions impacted some of your other building blocks, such as thoughts, movements, body sensations, and the little as a bonus, images or memories, right? Because emotional memories are very significant. And it's when we're feeling a certain emotion now, it's very easy for us to remember a time in the past when we felt the same emotion. I remember when I was in graduate school, I was reading a book and they used the term evocative memory, meaning that when you're feeling an emotion, it's easy to evoke the memory of a time when you felt the same emotion. So I forgot exactly where I read that, but that kind of stuck in my mind somehow. Okay, so we'll just take note of these things, kind of get our mindfulness muscles moving. All right, so now we're going to focus a little more on the beliefs and meaning. All right, so this is more about the thoughts building block. Okay, so based on some of the beliefs that I read earlier, I want you to identify some of the core beliefs that you believe that you have about yourself, others, and the world. Okay, and just write those down. All right, so think about each belief, like hold one in your mind at a time and really try to think about it and get into it. And then just notice as you're thinking about that belief, what happens to your other building blocks. Okay, and do this one belief at a time. So it might be a little different for each one, you know, so each belief might impact them a little differently. So just notice that, okay? It doesn't mean have to be good or bad, and you don't have to judge it. Just notice we're investigating how it impacts the rest of the building blocks. Okay, so this one looks a little more complicated, but don't worry, I will give you an example on the next slide. Okay, so we're doing some beliefs again. So I want you to identify one limiting belief you've recently experienced. So not just a good belief, like before, maybe one of these were good beliefs, I don't know, positive beliefs rather. So maybe there's a limiting belief that you've experienced and just notice what that is and write that down. So then really think about the belief, really try to get into it and notice these 4 building blocks that go with the belief. Notice including what movement you tend to make when you really think about it or what movement you want to make. Then we're going to do the opposite movement. Okay, we did this in another recent lesson and we're going to do it again today because it's very easy to control our movement, right? We can notice what our body's doing and move the opposite. Okay, so we're going to try doing the opposite movement and hold that new position or stay with that new movement. Then go back in again and notice the other building blocks. Okay, so let's try an example. So I picked one of the ones that were on the list and it's one that sometimes we get kind of wrapped up in. All right, so one limiting belief might be it's all my fault, right? When we get too deep into self-blame. So we go, oh God, it's all my fault. Oh, right? So what happens to my building blocks when I really think about it's all my fault? Thoughts, I keep screwing up. There might be other more current thoughts related to a situation that has to do with that deep belief of it's all my thought. It's all my fault. So whatever that happens to be, just, you would go with that. I just didn't have room here, okay? So emotions might be anxiety, guilt, hopelessness, etc. Body sensations might be heaviness, collapse. Oh, it's all my fault, right? There's a certain weightiness about that. My movement might be head in my hands, collapsed posture. It's all my fault, right? So I'm looking at my movement and I'm saying, all right, what's the opposite? I'm bent over, my head's in my hands. All right, what do I got to do? All right, let me put my hands by my side. Let me lengthen my spine, put my chin up. All right, I'm moving in the opposite direction. I'm sitting here right now. I'm going to stay here for a little bit and notice what happens, all right? So as I'm sitting here, things are starting to shift a little bit when I stay with it, all right? So a thought pops in my head. It's like, I still can learn, you know? So I'm thinking that because it's hopeless feeling, thinking it's all my fault. It's almost like I'm never going to learn, and it's always going to be my fault. It always has been my fault. I always screw up. I don't know what I'm doing. But maybe now it's like, you know what? I can learn something else, or I could do better. It doesn't always have to be this way. Maybe something like that pops in my head. Emotions. Maybe I'm still a little anxious, but you know what? I'm feeling a little more brave. And bravery or courage is when you feel the fear, but you try to do it anyway. Like I could still move on in my life. I could still press forward, even though maybe I have made some mistakes. Okay. Body sensations. So maybe like I'm a little more activated now. I feel like my heart fluttering, but I also feel my back's a little stronger, you know, and maybe that's a positive thing. Like I feel a little more strength rather than this weakness and collapse. Okay. Movement. I noticed I took a deeper breath. You know, all of a sudden, like I drew in a deep breath because I'm sitting up straight, and it was a little bit of a release. And okay, things are starting to shift a little bit. See how that goes? All right. And that's all, my friends. That concludes the one for today. I hope it was helpful for you. So try the exercises, see how it goes, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, take care, guys. Talk to you soon.